everybody to a new episode of New Waylie, and today we're mostly going to do some little detailing, lots of extra little things that needed to be done or that I just thought would be great to have throughout the stuff we've built so far to liven up the place and make it seem a little bit more real and alive. And toward the end of this video, we're even going to have built the 5th level of this complex. Surprising, I know, but it's actually fairly small, and I really don't think we're going to expand it anymore from where we will leave it at today. So right now we're looking at something that was already done in the previous video, but I hadn't realized that I hadn't shown the footage of actually creating this. I'm not really sure why this is out of order. The only thing I can think of is that may have been quote-unquote off topic of what the last video was, so we're putting it here. Mainly I just wanted to show how much work it took to get the roads lined up, because again, fairly small scale, and I'm trying not to distort the terrain too much. So I had to really mess with the curves and the junction until finally something worked. After that was done, I put this poppable surfaces and stairs to start making the foundation, because it does have to go upwards a little bit to reach to where the elevator is right now. I'm pretty sure it's already placed. So although it may seem like a very simple matter, it actually took a little bit of work, particularly the plopping down of those surfaces at the road level, because this is not flat terrain. As I've said before, I'm really trying to avoid messing with terrain much. I want to show that we can build pretty much no matter what we have and really limit the terrain modification. So basically the idea is that this is the main ground entrance, and when I say main, it would be more like for vehicles to come in. So if you do drive a car, this is one of the main ways you would come into, particularly to go into underground parking, but also for any buses from the outside. This is where they would come in, and this is where they would also drop you off, which is why on the left side of this we're building the stairs and kind of like an entry plaza sort of thing for the complex, although really it only leads to the vehicle elevator. I made it very narrow, and I can't really remember why anymore because it's been such a long time. I thought that maybe between the passageway and the tunnel we just put down for vehicles, maybe we would have some water there. Like I could, deform some pool assets or something and maybe put some water there. Or more likely, I just wanted to leave it that way to try to make myself think of something to do with it. I thought it might be something cool to try. When it comes to the actual roads though, eventually I decided that they would both be one-way roads, making the left side at the actual entrance, and then the big one in the middle would be at the exit. So I imagined these underground areas to be for underground parking, and thus also an underground entrance to the complex. After that was finished, we came back to this transition, this ramp between the 4th and what will become the 5th level. And we're going to just detail the sides of this, because instead of just having the plain grass and walls, we need to have some trees here, some plants, make it a little bit interesting. I didn't want to make it too fancy though, so you see I went with these retaining walls that aren't really the best looking, but I thought they were good enough. I just wanted something a little bit different. However, you see how they don't distort evenly. When you see me edit the points, you'll see that there are actually a few different areas in the middle of the model, so I have to really even out all the nodes so that we have a fairly even texture throughout the whole thing. I haven't done that for left side yet, but most likely. Oh wait, no, it's fixed already. Yeah, you see that they kind of look like bricks or weave or whatever. They're all evened out now. Some mulch assets had just been released around this time, and I liked it. I was awesome. We can put this here because I didn't want this again to be too fancy. So just a little bit of a curb here, and just put some mulch decals or planters with mulch, and that would be just fine. Mulch or dirt, to be honest. Like, you can't really tell here, can you? Like, it's very dark, so I think it is technically mulch, but it's so dark it might as well be dirt. It doesn't really matter. It works just fine. And the other reason for that is also just to not really bring much attention to that, because this would be more of the centerpiece of this area. Add a little pool asset here to just make it look like I guess a pond, just a man-made pond or something. So I'm using the Sejong wall I talked about in the last video, shrunken down this much. It looks pretty decent. However, we got a little bit of an issue with the curve of the wall, so I added this other wall here, which I used before, but I had to use the new color settings in procedural objects to get it to match exactly as the ground level of the pool area right there, the pool tiles, I would say. Added another wall at the bottom here because I wanted a little bit of a ledge. I had originally considered actually using that ledge to put some really tiny bushes in there, but I ended up deciding against that and just having it as a ledge, just random fancy ledge, I would say. And instead, we're going to put the bushes on the outer edges. Now, this is also really cool where there is a park asset. Has those fish assets with it, and it's pretty cool because a couple of them are trees, which lets them kind of sway a little bit. It's a little weird though because when I tested it, I just thought they looked like dead fish floating around, so I didn't think that was a good idea. But there's also that spinning one. It has quite a few different fish rotating around, so that one was perfect. I put 2 of them in there, but I had to really be careful how I aligned them so that they were pretty much spinning only within the water and not actually like on the floor, because basically the asset is a little bit bigger than my pool area there, so it doesn't actually fit. But I just had to keep it at the right elevation so that when the fish go past the walls, at least they do so under the ground level, under the floor level, I should say. So now we've been finishing the pedestrian path I started the last time that I said would connect the 2 sides of the 4th level. There was a bit of tedious work there that I skipped through a lot, or I should say I sped up the video quite a lot, which was making those steps out of a curb piece. I believe it was probably the same piece that I used for the arrow transition end cap for the rows I've been using. But for the middle, I mean, we have this opening here, and there's got to be something special here. Now, I don't end up making this too nice right now because I wanted to leave it for maybe some detailing work later. I just really didn't have a good idea what to do, but at the very least have a platform sort of in the middle. So I took a bus stop, and that's the black part. That's the main structure we see there. I took a bus stop and just used procedural objects, of course, to get as fast as possible. And then that glass piece, which I like because it has those like ribs to it. I saw those in an Acros video and I really like them. Now, this is one of those regular things that I'll be repeating a lot, and I'm going to show it right here. Here's a freeze frame so you can see it carefully. That's actually at least, I think it's 3 or 4 different objects that I've put together. Of course, they're all individual procedural objects and I just drag them all together. But the difficulty there, which sadly I can't show because I don't know, maybe I built that thing off stream, but I took, okay, the white one is a vending machine that's actually pretty wide, and I really compressed it, really made it skinny, partly to hide the items that are being sold so that you can't really tell this is a vending machine. The one on the left is something similar, but it's actually a model with 2 parts, like 2 different models in one. So one of them I moved down, just sunk it underground, and you probably saw it when I moved it in. It was this red portion. But then the top part I combined with another probably ATM asset or something to give it a screen. So basically I just built myself this small terminal, small computers, and I don't really have any idea what they are. I haven't come up with that. I just call them the tiny terminals because, as you see, they are like probably waist height or something. They're pretty small, so they're not something you directly interact with your fingers or something. I'm not really sure how they work, but apparently they're an important thing because we'll be seeing it around this complex a couple times. And it's always going to be the same way. I already came up with this set design. It has that white and black tiling on the bottom, and then the 2 terminals, and then a bench or 2. So that's going to be a standard little fixture, a standard element that we're going to see. Hopefully not just in this apartment complex, but I'm probably going to have somewhere else. So it's just going to be a thing that people look for. I don't really know what. This is the future. I don't know what people use here, what kind of uses they are, but it's something standard that people need to use, kind of like how you see how you used to see maybe like telephone booths or even just gas stations as a whole, you know, things like that. Now all of this I think was pretty self-explanatory, so I didn't have to show it. The only thing was that it was kind of like a gravel base gravel area that I had to shrink down. I sped it up I think 24 times because it was just really tricky to be zoomed in enough to be able to highlight all the correct nodes to be able to shrink that properly without anything overlapping. And after that, it's just really normal detailing, but this is the first time I think that we actually see what most people normally consider detailing, right? Adding all these kind of assets like bikes and benches and planters and trees, things like that. So this was really cool because, as I said at the beginning, this is where I really start feeling that I was gonna say city, but again, there's barely a city here. The apartment complex really comes to life. You know, it's starting to feel a lot more complete now that you see things that people interact with, things that people use, things that people will sit on. I think the bikes themselves, that's just a great addition to this in particular. And as well as here, a different kind of benches, something a little more pastel color, something more pretty. Show this to be a special area. I got a little sign information post thing, and those I forgot what they're called, those little binocular things, because as I said before, this is like a perfect end cap to the park walkway, so it's great to have it here like an observation area, so you can look out into the distance, the rest of the landscape, or even just look across the apartment complex, or in particular what I'm going to end up putting on top of that pedestrian elevator. I'm pretty sure I had said before that I imagined that there would be some sort of power structure there, so it could be a generator, could be a relay station, but something for powering this area. So just so that we can have something kind of cool there, something glowy with lights. Ooh, I was really excited for what we might do there, but I think at this point I didn't really have any idea. But speaking of lights, that was one of the last things that need to be placed. I've seen a couple streamers always consider that they're at the end of their detailing of an area when they're putting trees down, but for me that's not true. I think for me it's usually when I start putting lights in, because I forget about the lights. It's pretty much only when I change into the night mode and I realize, oh, this area is completely dark. We need some lights here. But lighting up the area also made me feel that the mood of the area didn't feel right, and yeah, helped remind me that I needed some benches over there. Now we're finally getting some work done on our bus tunnel area. Maybe it doesn't feel like a long time for people watching these videos, but for me it does, because I remember that it took me a long time before I finally got into this. And I used this pillar piece, not sure exactly for what set it is. I'm pretty sure it's some sort of expressway piece, so a pillar, so most likely I'm gonna guess it's Ronix's expressway. Of course the list will be in the description, but yeah, I really wanted to emphasize that broken look and show that I was totally intentional, and not that, you know, we have these breaks in the tunnel just because of the intersection. I want to make sure that that's part of our design, and that's what I got done here. Then I brought this little, it's actually a futuristic residential building, I forgot the exact name of it, but I love using it as this mysterious component, kind of grill radiator like component that we sometimes use. So I had placed it before right under these vehicle elevators in the center, so I'm showing that it's got some sort of relation with transportation systems, right? It's got something to do with highways at least, whether it's a sensor package or some sort of security thing, I don't know, but it's there. And yeah, but speaking of these vehicle elevators, we're back to them just for a little bit, because for many streams I kept having those top parts disappearing because I didn't have the correct assets all loaded, all in my collection. So you saw right there, just really quickly, me is some overpass pieces and a bridge, and just how I put them together to make that bridge. Back to residential complex though, I was having a little issue here because we've had this kind of border piece on the sides of the lower levels, but they don't really work with what we've done up top, because we started doing curved edges on the top. So I had to take smaller pieces of it, or take like the prop version of the wall or something, and just make it myself, just kind of like a row of dominoes, just make the curve myself. Because once that was done, I was really excited to finally get to something a little bit more interesting, and that would be something more structural for this area. You know, so far if you just look at what this looks like, it's just a sandwich levels. And I didn't really want that. I didn't want this to be just look like a pallet, you know, like a wooden pallet or something, or just other things that are just like stacked on each other. It just looks dumb. It doesn't look very special, very futury. So it is the future, and technically we don't need much, but I still want to show that we can have some style here, obviously, especially for a residential area. It should look kind of fancy in some way. So I stretched out. I don't remember what these pieces were anymore. I'm pretty sure they were actually rectangular pieces, at least square rectangular, and I made them triangular. And I was just kind of messing around with them, just stretching them a little bit, trying to have some sort of triangle shape, then stacked some other ones below it to get this really funky model here that I really liked. And then I doubled the bottom one here so that just a more interesting kind of dual base or something here. And yeah, I really liked this. This almost wing-like sort of structure, I guess, to be like the main pillars. And the tricky part though was trying to find a right color balance, and I very quickly ended up on the green because I figured it was a very good principal color for our theme, since we do have a lot of greenery and the pedestrian path's roof is actually also like about the same kind of natural green, so it was very much a logical choice. The second color is having a little bit more trouble with, I think, but I settled on the orange because that also kind of matches, at least it echoes the ground, it echoes the rockiness. So I think it worked very well because it really echoes two core components of our philosophy and respect for nature in this area, right? So it's the greenery, but also working off rocks. So, and that's what the orange stands for. Now, I didn't want to have just a very sharp edge because I think, one, because it's unrealistically sharp, I guess. I mean, again, for the future, that's totally fine. But I think there was something else about it. Maybe it was just the top or something else I had in mind. I just didn't really want the sharp corners, so I ended up rounding that off with this pipe, and that finished our pillar. That was it. Just already slanted, I believe, as you saw there. Made a few edits to get that to work, and this would be also a fairly standard element of design. Yet another standard element that we're going to be repeating. So we're here at the main level of the complex and adding those to the actual doors, to the sides of the doors, to again really emphasize that it's fairly iconic to this area. It's almost like a symbol of this residential complex. Now, having slightly more realistic structural elements like that was a big thing I was really looking for. Once that was done, I could actually get started on the 5th level, which you see here. Apparently I did this off stream, or maybe just forgot to record or lost the video, whatever, but it's fairly simple. This is why I showed the freeze frame there. Just more flat ploppable surfaces and the houses, but I took this surface network to make these rings in the backyard. That was a really cool thing that I don't even know how I came up with the idea, but I just had I guess I was looking for some sort of way to peek through your backyard and see the stuff below, because I was worried about covering too much, you know, like I know a lot of this might get covered up eventually in different ways, but I still wanted clear ways of seeing what's below. And that's what I did here. So we're going to be using, again, this railway border network, and to, of course, make the border all on the outside, but also the inside, right? Also that those big peepholes that we have here. And once those were set, I really wanted to put some fences here. Again, fences are not necessary. They're not something that are in any way meant to be functional in my city, but I just thought they looked good as something that was used in the past. You know, in the future they might still have aesthetic uses, because, you know, it's a thing that people did. You know that you tend to bound things with vertical things like that, and it just looks cool. And I really got kind of like the shot you just saw. I actually do have a picture of that, and I really like it. So definitely, I'm all for those fences right there. It looks awesome. But because they're not necessary, as you see, they're only around the outer curves. They're only around that loop area, but not really the rest of this whole area, like, at all. Now, part of the reason for that work we put in there, though, is to show that this is the 5th level now. Things are a little more fancy, a little more luxurious, and so I'm considering each one of those buildings to actually be their own house. So those are specifically 5 houses right there, 5 households. So we're also making the front side a little bit more interesting, and I did this weird random loop here as well, and I figured that's a place where we're just gonna have maybe just a bush. And I think that is what I end up doing, just something really simple, but it's just something elegant is the word I'm looking for, I guess, because we're not trying to be extravagant here. Just make some interesting little curves and just plop a bush. That was it. Detail the backyard, and at this point we're pretty much just finishing up the 5th level. It's just getting these benches and stuff in. Although I did want to also add a pool, because a pool is also, I think, something that's really cool and will also show the sense of luxury here, right? Like, look at these nice big yards. They're not that huge, I guess, but especially for what we've had so far in the lower levels, yeah, those are pretty nice big yards. Especially how there's no real barrier between them, which is what we have at the ground level. So I guess I'm lying. I guess we do have some backyards that way, but the backyards at the ground level are totally covered up. There's the second stack of condos and stuff are right on top of them. But here I'm going to make a good effort to keep this fairly open somehow. So like maybe the 6th level or 7th level is going to stay on top of the houses, and their yards won't come out. Actually, maybe it'll be the yards themselves that are over these houses, and then so there's actually nothing straight above the yards. Now, the people living here, having the whole building to themselves, do own this area, so that's why one of those houses did decide to, you know, line their yard with some trees. And so we put that there again. Try to show there's, you know, some different personalities here. Now, as we're reaching the end of the video, we've only got a couple more things to do. Mainly, it's just adding a couple services to make sure that, you know, that garbage and death care can reach those houses. I think we saw some icons there. That might have been an actual problem I had there at the moment. And then we're going to make the little sculpture at the sort of observation platform we have between the 5th and 4th level, and then we'll be done. Now, this part is kind of just a little bit funny because, yeah, look at that. There's really not a lot of space here for the car, so I love how the car just like, well, what do you expect me to do? just rides up on the stairs, like, literally drove up to your porch. And yeah, although I still don't understand why people don't just back up the cars into the houses. I mean, not into, you know what I mean, toward the houses we're gonna pick up someone from. It's like, isn't it going in the back, you know, like you open up the hatch? And that right there was just a little video of that hearse on its way back. Now, finally, the sculpture. So the sculpture or whatever itself is just some pillar that's really shrunken down. And for the base, I just took these pots for plants, made a little hourglass shape from them. Then I took, I believe it was either concrete bench or one of the Clara benches, and flipped one of them upside down and put it below the other one to make the little support from the wall. And then it was just a matter of setting up some lights, because I really wanted this to be illuminated and just overall add some glow to this area. So we got these horizontal spotlights, I think they are, 2 green spotlights, and then we have some lights on the bottom. Sadly, a lot of these lights only have primary colors along with like white, so I don't know if that's a vanilla restriction, because there is a facade light set that recently came out, and that has a lot more colors, but requires a custom effects loader or something. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. So that's why I made a mix of the primary colors and just try to offset them in a way so that, you know, they don't just blend into white or something, and so we still get more interesting glow. But this is it. That's what we end up with. Now the whole thing is pretty glowy. Oh, there's something right there on the left side, which I don't have its creation as it is right there on video, but it's very simple. I can explain that quickly, and we're actually going to do a lot more work with it in the next video, and that is the more interesting part for sure. What you saw right there is actually very simple, but it's the extra stuff we're going to do that gets really interesting. But that is, let's just say it's like a power core or something for the area. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's not much more to say from that. It is a power thing. So anyway, thank you very much. We've reached the end of the video. Here's a final look at our city. Hope you enjoyed it. Please tune in next week for the next video where we're gonna get some really fun stuff shown there, like the power core I just showed you, and I'm not really sure what else because I haven't made the video yet. Now have I? Do come by the stream if you like to see this being done live, and if you're a returning follower, you will get to name one of those houses and they become yours. So thank you one last time. Like and subscribe. But first, wherever you may be, good morning, good afternoon, and good night.